I think we are on time, folks, so we're going to get started. So welcome to the panel. I guess there's a triple bonanza panel happening back to back to back, right? And this is the first one. So hopefully you're in the right place on the bleeding edge of testing. My name is Tariq King, and we're going to kind of go through and talk about just some of the format for this. It'll be just as a surprise for the panelists as it is for you, so don't worry about it. But I think we'll have fun, right? So as I said, my name is Tariq King, and what you're going to see here today is not prepped, right? There's not scripted, there's nothing seeded. No one knows more than our panelists, because I've told them from the beginning that just as PNSQC is a very authentic organization that cares about sharing knowledge, nonprofit, my vision for this panel is to have real conversations about important topics with these folks that I've been dying to ask some questions to. We all have different backgrounds and different perspectives, but we're all bonded by our appreciation for software testing and quality. So that being said, it's okay to have a difference of opinion, but we're not going to violate any codes of conduct. And so in a nutshell, we're going to respect each other. So despite all the colorful graphics on the color slide, hopefully there will be no blood today, by no means a brawl, right? Getting into it. So what is this panel all about? Well, first, let me tell you what it's not necessarily all about. And it's not about AI and machine learning or any single technological advance in our space, right? We can talk, and we probably will talk about some of those things. But when I came up with this idea, it was more than just that, right? It's actually more about whether or not in software testing and in quality assurance, do we have a culture of innovation embedded in our approaches, in our tools, in our methods, and in our people. And so, where do we see it most? How can we help to foster it if we do have it, so that it can thrive? But if not, then why, right? And what is stopping us, and how can we overcome any obstacles that are in our way, right? And so that's my vision for this, and we're going to get there, right? That being said, you're not here to hear from me. You're here to hear from these folks. We have a lot of expertise in the room virtually. So Julia, head of training over at Quality Works Consulting, Adam, Senior Director of Enablement at Global Payments, Elise from Functionize, VP of Product, Daryl, who's a Sales Engineering Manager, and Mabel. So the question here becomes, like, what do you get when you put like growth and development in a room with engineering, product, and sales? Well, we'll find out, right? Hopefully we'll get a great conversation. Now, remember, these panelists haven't seen the questions that I have. And how this is going to unfold is that I'm going to ask questions, and these questions may target first some specific person, right? So I'm going to have just 4 questions. It's not a lot. And it'll be your question, but not only yours to answer. Your question just means that you will answer first. And remember, you haven't seen these questions, so it's okay to stop and think and let silence do the heavy lifting when I ask my question. They're not hard, I don't think, but I want you to know there's no time pressure on that. And so everyone will wait patiently, and then after the person whose question it is has answered, then anyone can chime in and say everything, right? For the folks in the audience, I also want you guys to post any questions that you might have to the chat, because then we're going to take some questions at the end after my 4 questions have been answered. And it's also okay for the panelists to ask each other questions and go from there. And so that's how this is going to roll. Any questions before we start? All right, so we're good to go. So hopefully we're ready to have a heck of a conversation, right? So I'm going to stop sharing so that we get a bit more personal, and then we'll come over so we can see everyone's face. And let me end my slideshow and start with my first question. All right, so get everyone from behind here. Got too many screens, right? This is what happens when you have too many screens. All righty, so Julia, where are you on my screen? Julia, you there? Oh, there you are. I see you. You're in Jamaica, so you got the good background.
Yeah.
So Julia, I remember like when we were talking and I invited you on this panel, you were a bit hesitant, right? Mainly because in looking at the panel, it's like, oh, this looks like future or maybe AI, and these are areas that you and your team I know are now really beginning to explore. And so, now like how I view you is as someone who has their hands in current testing tools and practices and leading the ways with tools and technologies that are very current. I checked out your YouTube channel, and I know you do a lot and have a lot of other folks who are following you. And it's very hands-on, right? WebDriver IO, GitLab, CI/CD, test automation strategies, right? And so I want you in this panel to represent the current state of the art, right?
Okay.
And the community behind that current state of the art. And so my question for you is really, where are we as a community doing well with pushing the envelope on that current state of the art and practice of testing? And where are we lacking? In other words, with all the tools and techniques and methods that are out there that you are using and promoting, where do you think folks are happy versus having the most frustration, right? Because I think part of this is that the other folks on the panel who may not be representing current state, but maybe more representing future, need to listen to the voices of the current state to be able to guide that path moving forward. So what are your thoughts on where we are right now with the current state, and where are you most happy with progress versus frustrating?
Yeah. So I think where we are right now is a lot of tools, which is really true when you look at, there are new tools coming out, there are existing tools that we are trying to learn and understand. And so if you're new coming into the space, the question is always, which tool should I use? I think we need to switch focus instead of saying which tools, is to really learn different strategies and processes, because the tools, they will change over time and they will improve over time, but certain testing strategies and techniques, they're going to remain and they can be applied across the board to different tools and technologies. I think what's really going well is the communities that we have in testing. So Ministry of Testing has a really big community where they have, right now, they're also having a 30 days of tools where they're asking about what your favorite tools are and that sort of thing. So it's a really interesting conversation for people. So I think we have a community and a lot of persons are sharing their knowledge about the different tools that they're using, and that is helping a lot of new learners. And even if you're old, but maybe you're not familiar with the tools, to also learn about it. So I think that's what's really going well. I also like that we have a lot of developer advocates, that's what we call them, and they are out there teaching people about the different tools and technologies and helping them to really understand how it can be used. In addition to that, I also think when teaching people, we need to sometimes go all the way back to, why am I using this tool in the first place? What is this tool really going to solve? And then walk them through from a beginner perspective on how they can use the tool. So for example, AI, I'm not an AI expert. So if you were going to show me an AI tool, you would first need to explain to me what AI is, what are the use cases for AI, how I can use this tool to solve a specific use case. And that would help me to really cement and understand better how to use the tool and why I would need to use it.
Awesome. So let me ask a question on that, and then I'll open it up to folks to comment. That was a loaded answer, lots of good stuff there. Any major points of frustration? I mean, obviously, a lot of tools bring its own world of maybe some frustration, because if you don't have the context, right, of when to apply it, then we just start, maybe being overwhelmed with so many tools, right? But as you said, you kind of focus on the fact that there's communities come together, there's education around it. Any particular area that you think, yeah, this is really frustrating for right now? And it's okay if there's nothing, but just wondering if there's any specific area that you think this is more painful than I think it needs to be, or maybe we really should focus here because this is not a great experience for us right now.
Not really. I would just say documentation can sometimes be improved for certain things, which then goes back to the learning process. So if you're starting out with a new tool, if it's not documented properly, and people have different learning styles. So instead of only having written, you can maybe have video tutorials as well, or maybe have a sandbox that people can play in before. Because sometimes a lot of the errors are when you're trying to set up something. So because you're stuck in the setting up phase, it takes so long for you to actually be able to use the tool. So if you have a sandbox that I can go and play around and learn the tool in, instead of having to put all of that on my own computer, then that could be helpful.
Great. Spoken like a true head of training, right? So, all right, let me open it up for anyone on the panel to comment on this subject, or if you have something for even Julia, it's fine.
Yeah, I think, when talking about, weaknesses and where we're potentially not doing a good job, I think test data is one of the areas that, I see so many tools and testers struggle with. So I think I've always thought that it's, that is the next multi-million-dollar idea, right? In the testing world, is being able to solve and have some intelligence around test data. So that's certainly my area of frustration, especially being in a financial technology company dealing with a lot of data, is, most solutions just can't keep up, right? They don't know how to play with data in the cloud. They don't know, how to, find, intelligence within the data.
Yeah, I totally agree. I in this order, I know you didn't ask me this, but I'm going to answer you anyway. I see test maintenance, like I set up a test and now I need to run it all the time, and just it breaking for whatever reason. Test maintenance I see as number one from my perspective for the last 20 years or so. Still see that as number one. Number two is test data, exactly like Adam said. Number three, I would say test environments is a struggle, because a lot of companies still have a static, this is my QA environment, static test environment, a static, staging environment. There's not a lot that have sort of turned their environment set up into an automated solution and invested on kind of the pre-prod automation side. Even at big companies, a lot are still not doing this. I would love to get to this point where we have kind of an A/B or a blue-green kind of production deployment process, where literally the environment you tested on, that is now the production environment. But we're still not quite there yet, most places.
Cool. And to be clear, the questions are for everyone on the panel, right? Don't just because I pick out someone first doesn't mean you're not all, remember, equally treated here, right? Except there's some preferential treatment up front, right? But you'll all get your chance at that. Sorry, Daryl, you were going to say something? Or I was Adam? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah, so I'd be interested to hear, Elise, talking about the test environment. So do you think that testers then need to pick up some like DevOps-based skills to understand how to have more control over their environments? What do you see as like some of the fix for that?
I think there needs to be just a culture of making quality important at the company. And I think everyone has to be somewhat involved, because no matter what tool you have, the site under test, the application under test still needs a good test environment. And let's say you want to do a load test or something like that. You clearly don't want to do that in production. And if you already have the system to set it up in a pre-prod environment that is just like production, why not carry that through? But a culture of this for sure. But obviously I work at a tool company, so I would advocate using tools for a lot of this. But your environment is your environment, and that's going to be completely custom to your company. So I think culture of quality and getting your DevOps team involved would be ideal.
To Adam's point about getting more testers involved in DevOps, I think that's a good place to start, because, for example, if I understand CI/CD, I can be able to ship out releases and check what's in the build logs and that sort of thing. And that will help to kind of have everyone understand at a certain level and then move forward.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it.
Cool. Any other thoughts on this? I mean, so this is not naturally coming up in this order, and which is great, because Adam is next on my list. But Daryl, did you have any thoughts? If not, we can go on.
Only some passing ones. I think I agree with everything everyone said. I do see a lot of the same challenges. Where I think, though, kind of touching on the culture a bit, Adam's first response was, does that mean testers need to learn DevOps? And I think there's also this, this competing dialogue. Well, do developers need to learn testing? And it seems like, the messaging that I see in the market is trying to draw a line down the middle and then spread everyone on these sides. It's like, okay, well, testers, you have to learn all of these new things. And developers, by the way, in addition to all the things you've been doing, you also have to learn all of these things. And somewhere lost in the mix there sometimes seems to be this whole team approach that I think is what really works and is sort of reality in a way. One group can't own everything and then have the other group own everything. Those are silos. And I think it's really important to know how to upskill or cross-skill your team in the right way, to Julia's point, to where people can understand the context, but they don't necessarily have to be the practitioner for the specific thing. And because we need practitioners for all sorts of things in software development. But I think that shared context is how we end up on the same page and we start making magic together as teams and start producing quality products.
That's very well said. That's very well said. So since we're on the topic of DevOps, because Adam opened that can of worms, right? So as a senior leader around DevOps and test engineering, and when I think of those things, I think of speed and fast-paced delivery, and sometimes those things may not align with quality goals, as you know, right? Because you can deliver fast and you can deliver a lot of crap fast, right? There's nothing to stop you from doing that, and then say, well, okay, it's okay because I can fix it fast, right? But my question for you is, when it comes to people and processes and all these tools and stuff on the technical side and from development and operations, what are some of our biggest hurdles to our ability as testers or quality professionals to keep pace with this speed, adapt our methods, our techniques, and even our tooling to a world that wants to really consume software faster and changes faster? So that's my question to you. Where are we with getting through these hurdles? Are we even doing a good job? Where can we improve?
Sure. Yeah, and I might ruffle a few feathers with my answer here, but I believe that most of the hurdles come from senior leadership at companies, where there's a lot of uncomfortability in changing, processes, where they believe that even though something might be going, slow, or it takes a certain person a lot of time to do it, they have a lack of, kind of understanding or a lack of willingness to adopt a brand new process. So, I see that, and I see that from a business side as well, where they say, hey, we've been doing it this way. Why do we want to change, right? Why do we want to adopt this brand new, framework, or, start using something like Docker, or, go into the cloud? So, I think what that really poses for testers is two things that I've seen to try to work through these hurdles. Number one is, so I'm a big fan of a technique called WIFM, which means what's in it for me. So whenever I'm up against, a very difficult conversation, I try to look at the other person's point of view and see where they're coming from. So if it's something like the leadership team or the business team, try to understand what is their business value, right? What do they believe is important to the company? And if you can match the work that you're wanting to do, where maybe it's, hey, we want to set up an automated pipeline, but it's going to take, 2 releases are going to be a little bit slower because we need to devote, 30% of our time to build this pipeline. But then after that, we're going to have, be able to deploy 3 or 4 times a week. So if you can kind of frame it in that mode of, hey, here's what we're going to get for this, and here's the benefit for everyone for this, I tend to get better reception there. And then the other one is, and this is so important for testers, is the proof of concept is your friend, right? Don't try to boil the ocean with making lots of fixes. A lot of times when people want to implement pipelines, they try to do everything at the same time for dev all the way up through production, and really start small, right? Start with those goals in mind, understanding your business value, and if you can show real success, a lot of times you can kind of skip past those hurdles.
Okay, cool, great insights. Anyone else have any thoughts on just DevOps and keeping pace, and how does testing thrive? Great points, Adam, on the leadership. Sometimes it can be a roadblock, or just the mindset of, this is the way that we've always done it, right? That can be a big hurdle for companies. Any other thoughts on what Adam has said here?
Totally agree with Adam. We did Adam, I don't know if you remember this, the Agents of Change webinar together once upon a time, about how to get someone who is not, in upper management to convince upper management that they need something different, something new. I actually also see it from the other perspective, where management wants something done, they want to release faster, whatever it is, and they're like, let's try this new thing, and it's hard to get individuals to open up to change too. So I see it kind of from both directions pretty regularly. So from kind of a tool type of solution, a data-driven solution versus a scripting as the solution with kind of what's out there right now. It's sometimes hard to get people to say, hey, maybe I'm not going to write code. Maybe let me see what's out there to solve the, some of these other challenges. But these challenges don't affect me, they affect the business. So it's sort of hard to kind of see from both directions. Sometimes when you want to, improve an overall process for the company or for the product from kind of your seat. So I love the idea of kind of stepping out and seeing from someone else's perspective, what they're trying to do, what the business is trying to do, what the company vision is.
Yeah. And to add to that, I think sometimes everyone doesn't understand the amount of work that goes into it from everybody's perspective. So management doesn't understand the work that the tester has to do or the DevOps person has to do. So trying to really communicate well and say, if it is that we want to test fast, that means that I need to have this amount of test automation in the CI pipeline. Therefore, the developer needs to do this. So really write out like a roadmap of how you're going to get there and what is the actual task that each person has to do, and understand how long it's going to take, and try to just really work together to get it done. As Adam said, slow and steady wins the race. It's not try to do it fast and then nothing really works. You're going to spend a year going around just doing it fast. If you really take your time, then the end result is going to be so much better.
Yeah, I always tell people smarter over harder, right? Or versus harder. And sometimes you got to go slow to go fast, right? Cool. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that organizational change was the top reason in Maple's last state of testing and DevOps survey that they do annually, was the chief blocker for kind of everyone's, goal for changing. What's your goal for digital transformations, agile? Elise made a really great point, though. We often like to point the finger up as the problem, but individuals can be the challenge too. When you were speaking about that, I remember the sort of, okay, everyone, we're going to do agile now, transition. For me, 10, 15 years ago, for some people, it was yesterday, because folks are still going through that change and managing that. And folks were not eager to switch to agile. Everyone hated it initially. And now I think if you talk to someone who's been doing it for a long time, they can't imagine going back to waterfall and the challenges for that. So there's friction all over the place. And I think, to Julia's point, you have to understand where everyone's perspective is coming from and what their concerns are and what everyone perceives as risks to this, because those are different too across the board. And only then, again, kind of this whole team or really whole organization approach, you have to find some common ground and align on what the outcomes are. And the path to get there may shift and may be windy, but you're all trying to get there. The goal isn't just, we want to release 5 times a week. Why? The goal is to be able to get product in the hands of users, faster, so everything we do is a means to an end, writing code is a means to an end. So I think kind of taking this, more holistic approach is important. Because we all have if we were going to take a whole team approach, everyone has to have a voice, sort of in how we approach these sorts of challenges. And you have to have buy-in at all levels, or it's just not going to work, or it's going to take longer. It'll eventually work.
Yeah, for sure. So next on my list is Elise, right? And so again, I don't know how this is happening, but I just knew, like, have faith and things will flow together and it'll just happen once you keep the conversation natural. But what you just said, Daryl, about speed and all that. The whole point of speed is to get features out faster, right? And then here I have my product person. So Elise, you're gonna definitely represent product for me, but not just current product. I need you to represent future product, right? In other words, your goal is to make sure that Julia, if she does have any frustrations anywhere or things that she doesn't even know that she needs to be more productive, what are some of those things? So, when we were talking the other day and kind of reflecting on even AI and machine learning and looking at 5 years ago where all these products were, or even companies that weren't even around yet, now they're here and doing all these, cool producty things, right? And doing also a great job marketing them and trying to balance that, right? So for me, the question is for you, when you think of vision, product vision moving forward, and the technologies that we have now, could be AI, could be serverless, could be whatever, it doesn't really matter. What are those areas of the products that you feel represent things that we need to fill? You mentioned already some of the pain of maintenance, right? So I'm guessing you're going to mention that as well. But is there any key things that you want to highlight that you think, hey, from a product perspective, when I'm looking out there, because I know you spend time out there, even when we talk for 5 minutes, you're already telling me, hey, these are some things that I think we are lacking. So really want to hear your perspective on the future of these products in particular that could help us transform.
Yeah. Well, so there's a lot of ways I could maybe think about what you just said. So if I look at kind of the future of the products that we're building, so we're building very high tech, very complex products, lots of layers of products. We have we have machine learning in products. We have, tons of room for unit tests. End-to-end tests can be tricky. So there's a lot of like problems with the products that we're building just because they're getting more and more complex. And we internally at my company, we face all of the same problems that other companies face, in terms of we have these different layers of our application. How do we test each layer? How do we test them together? What really matters? And I do find the maintenance to be challenging. So any of our parts of our product that we can't use our own product on for whatever reason, the maintenance is the hardest part. If we want to make sure our application works against, some random site and that site changes and we don't handle it, it's a problem. So I'll maybe start with some of the high tech stuff. So like the machine learning, let's say you have machine learning in your application, you're not sure to test it. So an example would be Alexa or the Let service you want to test. And it's really tricky to test like a product that uses machine learning. You have to have an enormous test suite. So we have on our models, we have thousands and thousands of test suites, so much so that anytime any bug comes in where our model missed, we automatically, we don't touch it. We automatically add in the input. You expect an output. So models, basically, I send something into it and I expect something out of it. And we want it to be right a certain percentage of time. So you have to test that stuff very, very differently. And if I look at, these complex sites, so I'll use an example of like a point of sale type machine or like an online ordering thing that you could order inside of a store, or you could order from a web app, or you could order from a mobile web app, a native web app, a desktop app, wherever, or the point of sale in the store, or a big touch screen in a store. It gets really complicated because you have to test all these endpoints. And obviously you have to do, this API testing. That's kind of critical to any system because everything in the future relies on that. But I have this theory that this test pyramid that we've been using for many, many years is kind of flipped upside down. So when you look at this test pyramid, you have unit tests and this big block at the bottom. And then you have, API tests, you have end-to-end functional tests at the top, which has made sense for a long time because unit tests are cheap and easy to write. But if you look at the value of kind of why you're testing in the first place, it doesn't really make sense. You don't spend all this time and effort testing in order to refactor your code. That's like the main point of unit tests, right? Is I want to quick feedback. I want to be able to, mess with my code, refactor my code. I want to run my unit tests and see if anything broke. But I have this belief that things are going to change in the direction towards, I only care what a user experience is. I only care about end-to-end testing and security. But I believe that's one kind of change in the future of sort of how we're going to look at products going forward. That's how I look at our product. I mostly care what a user experience is when they use it.
Gotcha. Agreed. So much to unpack there. Like, I've been big proponent of a lot of the different, practices that you mentioned, right? But I'm also a person that always steps back and said, well, why are we doing this way? Is it time for a change? What were some of the reasons that we do? And there's all these different reasons. And now we have a different current state, right? We have a lot more compute power. We have the ability to scale. We got a lot of data available. It's just bringing out a whole new world. And so I definitely think it's time to kind of step back and revisit some of those fundamental things that we, because otherwise we get stuck in the, we've always done it this way, right? We've always done the pyramid this way, right? Maybe that's time to change. But anyone has any other thoughts on product features, gaps, product impediments, and those sort of things?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're looking at, and maybe it's like a little bit different angle than, at least what you were saying, is for us, it's the security of the product. So not the security features in terms of what sort of security testing is doing, but how is the product handling our data? how does a product connect into our environment? Especially with what happened with SolarWinds, right? It's really had us, take a really hard look at the way all these, the vendors and products and applications are, using data, talking to systems, how we log into things. So for instance, we were evaluating a product just recently that we declined to go with because their MFA was not strong enough. So, when we look at, capabilities of products and what product teams are building, I think we found for a really long time that there's a strong focus on building robustness in the features, but a lack of, focus on making sure that that product is secure, right? And it can function in an environment and we don't have to worry about supply chain issues. So, that's one area that I'd really like to see a lot of product teams and applications really start to focus in on because that is, so important to make sure that, that product is not an avenue for a bad actor to get access to, an environment or some sort of data that they could, then, have some sort of further actions.
Yeah, agreed, Adam. So here's the thing. One of the things that I've been exposed to more recently, and as we know, like Daryl is the last person on my list of questions, right? Because from a product standpoint, engineering standpoint, even from a current state, what I've seen, is, especially now moving into a startup company versus working for a big corporation, I have a newfound appreciation for sales and sales engineering. That is for sure. I'm in a lot more sales calls and I see and hear a lot of the things. And really, this kind of brings us back out of tools a little bit, even though there's a key aspect of what you're doing that's about the tools, more to do with adoption, right? Because I've seen, going through things like POCs and all this stuff. And at the end of the day, folks want to, especially with like things like AI and machine learning, they want to throw their hardest problem at you, right? Like, okay, but can the bots do this or can you deal with that? And this is my hardest problem. I want that to fix that. Where you're trying to sell them a product. You're trying to go through a proof of concept to show them the value of this thing, and sometimes you hit these impediments on adoption. So Daryl, like, my question for you is like, what have you experienced in that realm? Where do you see that maybe we as a testing community can be better at, not just selling to, someone who may have a need, but even internally having good representation. You need an advocate to be able to say like, yes, we can benefit from this technology. You need that person internally to talk to the right stakeholders to eventually get this technology in place to solve that need. So I guess my question to you is, where do you see that we can either improve? What are some of the maybe ridiculous expectations that might be out there? Just give me your perspective, because I am definitely interested in this part.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I think, just to, spoiler alert, there's still no silver bullet. Every tool has some sort of thing that's probably not going to fit your use case 100%. And that's across disciplines and across fields and everything, right? Nothing's ever perfect. But I think you increase your chances of good adoption with a tool or with anything when you start building a base of mind share around it. And so when I'm conducting a POC on Mabel, I'm always kind of looking at the team who I'm working with and just kind of saying like, okay, who's going to be my subject matter expert? Who wants the focus? Like, who's hungry for this right now? Like, who's feeling the most pain from their current situation? And that person is typically going to be the one who's going to do a little more work than the rest of the other people on the team. They're going to ask different questions or deeper questions, right? They just show more engagement. And so identifying those people, whether it's me looking inside from a vendor or me talking to someone else in my company to say like, hey, don't you think this could be better? You have to find people to support, add more voices to your chorus. But when you're trying to spread a new tool or spread a new process or spread something, everyone has to have some semblance of alignment on why, what's the value of doing this? And then you also have to have somebody who's going to want to participate in the rollout of that. You need to get buddies whenever you're trying to make change. And I think that's the thing that I see most. It's, there's this one team. Are there other teams? Someone says, oh yeah, I was telling somebody, about the stuff we were doing. And they wanted to know if they could come and sit in on a meeting. Like, Yeah, sure. That's how you get people learning new things and opening up to new possibilities. And so that's the sales part. I think, Tariq, what you were saying is, okay, great. Somebody brings on a new tool, everyone's very excited about it. And then it just kind of sits there and, is waiting for someone to access it and find some value in it. And that is, I think, more of an internal struggle at the organizations a lot of times. I think that's also where sometimes leadership comes in. I hear a lot of people saying, oh, we're not empowered, we're too busy, we don't have time to sort of bring on this new thing that we already just paid for. And that's, I think, where leadership has to step in and say, okay, we took a step on this new path. Now is not the time to stop. And I think that's just, I'm trying to think of a polite diplomatic way of saying this, but it's just the stuff of business sometimes in the way that works.
Yeah, there has to be, like you said, I think some level of accountability and responsibility to, we made this investment. You came to me and sometimes you asked for this. And sometimes the advocate is still very on board, but maybe other people in the org are struggling. So you're right. Sometimes leadership has to step in and say, hey, folks, like we made this decision. We're going down this path. I want to really realize the ROI. And that means you guys have to do your part. So that's a great insight. So any other thoughts on that from anyone? At least looks like he's ready to say something. So go for it.
So you both said something that triggered me a little bit. So I will experience customers, and not just customers in my company, but for my company, but like people in general, where with our product or with I worked at Tricentis beforehand, someone would come in and they come to the meeting with their arms crossed. What is this? Show me what you have. And they come in with this just negative attitude, don't want to change. And they're like, all right, I'm going to try the product. And then they're going to do something to their application to make it break. Because they can. Doesn't mean you can say I have the smartest product in the world, whatever. It does all this healing and it does whatever. And of course you can make any tool break. Like of course you can. You can make Selenium break. You just assert 1 = 2. So you can make anything break. And so coming into something like, let me evaluate this tool. Let me look at this new process. Let me go learn Java instead of Python this week. And if you go in with that bad attitude, thinking this is like not going to work and show me versus like, let me see, could this make a pain point I have better? I would love to see this like general change in attitude. And I see it maybe a little more in the tech industry and maybe a little more with testers. And this might be the nature of wanting to break things all the time, which I can appreciate having done it myself. But I just would love to see this like change in attitude of, hey, let's see what's next. Let's see what's out there. Let's see how we can make it better. Let's see what process we can try instead of, okay, we bought this tool, we're going to let it sit. Or, I don't want to try this new language because I don't know it. And I know this. So let me continue on with what I'm doing. So that was all I had to say.
No, great points. Julia, you were saying something?
Yeah, so you asked about adoption, and I think Elise and Daryl touched on some really good points, especially around the attitude that you come into it with. So at Quality Works, what we do is we have monthly workshops where each month there is a different tool or a different aspect of software testing that we're investigating. So for me, in order for something to become easier to adopt, I first have to understand it. I have to be open to it. And then I have to start playing around with it first. And then I can see how it can fit. So we are consultants, so there are going to be different clients that have different needs. If I don't know the different tools out there, if I don't understand them, if I don't see the value that they bring, then it's going to be hard for me to suggest those different tools. So to Ellie's point, you have to be really open to what the tool can bring. And so by taking the time to learn what the tool is, doing a proof of concept around the tool, and not just the hard things that you think will break it, but if you can get the tool to fit 90% of what you need, then that's a really good tool. You can find other things to bridge the other 10%, or maybe the 10% isn't needed because 100% sometimes is unrealistic. So think about how you can make adoption easy. So learn, understand, try, and have different conversations.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to do a rapid fire. We're a little bit over time, but we're going to do a rapid fire to get some questions answered from the audience. The first one is, does the panel have any thoughts on the transition from tester to site reliability engineer? So that sounds like a DevOpsy question.
Yeah. So, SRE is more so around infrastructure and operations a lot. So I see tester and testing as potentially a part of, what the SRE does, but really to me, they're two completely different roles. Whereas a tester is going to be more encompassing on, identifying the quality of the product, informing on various things, testing, checking, performance, automation, a wide range of things. And SRE is a little bit more focused on, that delivery around infrastructure and operations. So if you are transitioning your testers to SREs, you're still going to need testers.
Very well said. All right, one more rapid fire. Thoughts about tool vendors. Are the promises getting closer to what the tools are actually delivering to the users? And I'm glad that I'm representing PNSQC today, so I don't have to answer this question. But any thoughts on promises versus reality?
Like Daryl said before, no silver bullet. There's no one tool anywhere that is like just going to solve all of your problems and be magical. But I do think the tools are good enough. That's how I would describe it. I mean, Daryl works at Mabel. I work at Functionize. Tariq works at Test AI. And I think
work for PNSQC today.
He works for PNS. I don't know what I'm talking about. But there are a lot of tools out there, and I think they are good enough to solve kind of the core problems, and they at least have the flexibility to work around them. So that's my impression. I am obviously very biased, so don't talk to me, but I have written thousands of Selenium tests myself, and I maybe would never do that again, given where kind of the industry is now.
Yeah,
100%.
I'll say real quick, sorry, no problem. I just will say, I do agree. I think that we're better than we were years ago. Promises for a long time was a pain point of mine from vendors, even before I crossed over, but I've seen it improve. So I'll say that much. So Daryl, did you have some thoughts? And then we'll wrap up.
Mainly just echoing Elise, but I would say the same, right? My background is as a tester automation engineer. Like I've done the work too. And I think that, I evaluated Mabel at my previous company when I was looking for new tools to not suffer the same pains that I had in years previous. Like, surely there must be something new. Look at all these DevOps tools everybody else is playing with. Like, what about testing? And then I used Mabel and I was just like, oh my gosh, this thing actually works. And that was the kind of moment where I realized that, oh my gosh, like the marketing stuff is starting to ring true. And so I, when it came time for me to look for something, that's why I decided to jump over to a tool vendor instead of, yet another software company, because I wanted to be part of that, dream fulfillment of tools that actually work and do the things that we want them to. So I think we are getting to that point. I've said in previous talks that I've given that I think we're in like this golden age of testing right now, where, the spotlight is finally on us as a discipline, and the interesting new tools are finally coming to market to enable and empower our discipline. And so, yeah, I hope I live another 20 years in this career to see where it goes.
Yeah, I agree. So we're out of time, folks. Thank you so much. I just want to say sincerely to the whole panel, this has been fun. This has been great. We haven't stopped since we started. I wish we had 2 hours, but just again, appreciate it. Folks, remember to click that link, rate the session, and enjoy PNSQC. Thanks so much, Elise, Daryl, Adam, Julia. You made my day. So thank you.